Jim's gone.
Next Thursday.
All right, folks, let's come back together for our next docketed item. And before we do that, I just wanted to get Mr. Urban to clarify the binding elements and also the vote so that folks
Yeah.
can get it on the record.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Two things from the last docket. The vote was 12-1, not 13, and there were 6 binding elements, not 7. They were misnumbered on the screen, so just for clarification, 6 binding elements, 12-1 vote.
Right. Just want to make sure everybody understood that. So, all right, Ms. Fox, if you would, let's read our next docketed item, please.
Docket PZ 17-031, application has been filed by Axis Investments LLC for the approval of a revised development plan. The applicant is also requesting a waiver of section 300-050, property perimeter landscape buffer areas and plantings, and a height variance from section 180-040, C4 Highway Service District Property Development Regulations. The property is located at 1807 Milestone Village, LaGrange. The current zoning is C4 Highway Service District.
All right, thank you. And with that, Ms. Alvey, I think you're going to be presenting the docket.
I am. Good morning, Amy Alley with Oldham County Planning Development Services. As Ms. Fox stated, this is an application for a revised development plan along with a landscape waiver and a height variance. The property is located at 1807 Milestone Village here in LaGrange. It is zoned C4 Highway Service District, and this lot is approximately 3.37 acres. This is an aerial view of the lot. You can see that it does have like a little peninsula that comes out to Highway 53. Site history: on March 28th of 2006, the Oldham County Planning Commission recommended approval to the City of LaGrange of a zoning map amendment filed by Milestone Development Group on approximately 2.29 acres of the total 12.1 acres from C1 to C4. On March 28th, the Oldham County Planning Commission approved a preliminary plan submitted by Milestone Development LLC for the development consisting of 72,250 square feet of commercial and office space on 5 lots to be known as Milestone Village. Subsequently, on June 6th of 2006, the LaGrange City Council did approve the zoning map amendment filed by Milestone Development Group on the 2.29 acres from C1 to C4. Then in November of 2007, the Oldham County Planning Commission approved a revised development plan for a 2-story retail building to a 4-story Hampton Inn and Suites consisting of 95 rooms. Then on January 8th of 2008, the Planning and Development Administrator at that time, which was Louise Allen, approved a staff level minor change in the location of the hotel and the parcel and parking arrangement. So this is Lot 5, Milestone Village. This is looking from the drive into it, the east view into the property. This is the north view. This is looking from, we'll call it Highway 53, looking back into the property along Walgreens would be on your left. This is the view looking from south into the property. This is the lot looking into the back side of the Walgreens development. This is Milestone Village Drive. To your left is the hotel site, and then to the right is the Tang property and the feeder supply that is currently under construction. And then this is the east view. There'll be more pictures of this as well, but this is the east view. This is the retaining wall and the fence that abuts the residential zone property in Crystal Lake subdivision. This is just another view of the retaining wall, privacy fence, and the existing screening. And then this is, again, just a view from, we'll call it the center of the property, looking back out towards Highway 53. This property is owned by, as a separate lot, is owned by a bank. This is the adjoiner. This is the new feeder supply that you all approved about a year and a half ago. It's under construction. And then this is the Burger King that is located at the front of the development. And then this is the other Walgreens that is on the other side of Milestone Village Drive. The applicant is requesting approval of a revised development plan, landscape waiver, and height variance. The original approval of Track 5 in 2006 was for a 40,200 square foot, two-story retail center with 118 parking spaces. This is the 2006 development plan, just to give you an idea of what that looked like. This is the zoomed-in version of the 2006 approved plan. It was a total of 7.8 acres. It was a two-story retail center. You'll see that is highlighted there in the corner. The rear 4.32 acres of the property was noted as open space and future conservation easement on the plan, and testimony was given back in 2006 that it would eventually be deeded to the county or city. So this is what is now known as Track 6, which is the conservation easement. The plan was then revised in November 2007, as stated earlier, to a 59,500 square foot, four-story hotel containing 95 rooms and 125 parking spaces. And with this revised plan, it did show that 4.32 acres that we just spoke of divided off into Track 6. So this is the 2007 plan that shows the hotel, shows the hotel with the 125 parking spaces, and then this Track 6 had been deeded off for as conservation area. In January of 2008, the Planning Development Administrator at the time, which was Louise Allen, did approve a minor change in the location of the hotel and the parking arrangement. The hotel, this was the revised plan that pushed the hotel back towards we'll call it the east property line, and all the parking was located in the front. There was no parking at the rear. So this is a comparison of the 2007-2008. You can just see that circled there in yellow, that's the same hotel, but the 2008 plan pushed the hotel closer to the property line and removed the parking that's noted there along the rear. This is the 2017 plan. This is for a 48,971 square foot, four-story hotel with 80 rooms and 82 parking spaces. And the property perimeter is outlined there in red. So that's the existing property line. This is just a zoomed-in version of the hotel site. The minimum parking spaces allowed for this size retail use is 80 spaces. There is a declaration of easements, covenants, and conditions and restrictions, Section 2B, that was recorded in March of 2006, that outlines a cross-parking agreement for tracks 2 through 5, negating any need for a parking waiver. It all has shared parking. They're not asking for a parking waiver, but there is a parking agreement for lots 2 through 5. So this is comparing the 2008 approved plan to the 2017 proposed plan. You can see that the hotel is pushed back into the lot and does have parking along what we'll call the back side here along Track 6. It went from 95 rooms to 80 rooms and 125 parking spaces to 82. The proposed hotel is 49 feet tall, requiring a height variance of 4 feet. As stated in the justification statement, the hotel is located at the rear of the commercial development. It will not have an impact on the general area due to the increase in height. These were the elevations that were submitted with the application. The building itself is 49 feet in height, but does have ornamental roof features that are an additional 8 feet 10 inches. In Division 330, exceptions and modifications, item 1 says height requirements as prescribed in these regulations shall not apply except as noted in 3 below to belfries, chimneys, church spires, conveyors, cooling towers, elevator bulkheads, fire towers, flagpoles, monuments, ornamental towers and spires, smokestacks, scenery lofts, tanks, and water towers. So we are considering the part of the roof here as ornamental because it does not encompass the whole building. The actual building height is only 49 feet, and these are just part of the parapet roof. The applicant is also requesting a property perimeter landscape buffer area waiver of 50 feet to 25 feet along the eastern property line abutting the residential area. As stated in the justification statement, there is a 35-foot sanitary sewer easement in the area as well as existing retaining wall with privacy fence and plantings plantings which screen the residential properties and will still meet the 80% high opacity requirement. This is the area here. Again, this is Crystal Lake subdivision. Residential areas 53 is out here, just to give you your bearings. The solid green area, that is the 25-foot side yard setback and what they are proposing as the buffer area. The hashed green area is the area that they're asking to be waived. Get a little bit closer in on that. Highlighted in yellow there, that is the existing retaining wall that showed in the pictures that has the privacy fence and plantings already in place. And then highlighted there in purple, that is the 35-foot sewer easement. That is no on the plan. So again, this is the south view. This is looking, coming in off of 53. This is the, which is a glare, this is the existing retaining wall that is there, and you can see all the tree line that is there as well. And the fences, there is a privacy fence already in place, as well as plantings. And that's just a zoomed in version to see. So in summary, the applicant is requesting approval of a revised development plan with the following. They're asking for a height variance of 4 feet, and they are also asking for a landscape buffer area waiver of 25 feet. These are the previously approved binding elements from November of 2007, and then the ones that are listed in your packet as well as the proposed. The items there in blue are the same from 2007 as we are proposing today. Item 1 is our typical language. There shall be no changes to the development plan without approval of the Oldham County Planning Commission. We added number 2. It says any signage must be in compliance with section 290 and only permitted upon submittal and approval of sign permit application to the city of LaGrange. And then number 12 is the caveat that says the development plan must comply with all established state and county ordinances and requirements at the time of approval, and no building permit will be approved until all standards are satisfied. And that is all that I have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chisholm, City of LaGrange, do you have any comments or anything that you need to add as far as the staff? Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. All right, with that, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff on this proposed document? Any questions? Mr. Finn?
Amy, if you would, go back to the pictures where it's showing the front of the building on the drawing. Yes, right there. And you have the height of the building to the red line is 49 feet there,
Correct.
plus the facade above that?
Is an additional 8 feet 10 inches. So the area here,
So what did that give our total height?
it's 57 feet 10 inches.
Okay. Now, when you had the other slide up there showing the request, it seemed like to me that there were different numbers on there. Maybe I'm just,
Let me look. On the summary,
yes, ma'am, I think so.
they're asking, because the proposed structure is only 49 feet, because we're considering the ornamental portion of the parapet roof
Right?
as an ornamental feature, not the actual structure height. So the structure itself is 49 feet, and the
Okay.
required height maximum height is 45, so the variance is 4 feet.
So what you're saying, you don't have to include that, the top part that it raises above?
Does not have to be included.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Correct.
Any additional questions for staff?
The trees by the retaining wall,
Yes, ma'am.
they're going to stay there, or are they coming out?
You can get clarification from the applicant on that.
Probably be the one to ask. Any further questions for Ms. Allen? Yes, Mr. Douglas.
Just a clarification.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that I was just trying to finish reading the binding element. Reference the variance for the 49 feet.
Huh?
And the assumption is that we're asking for that height variance is because of the ornamental structure on top of the roof.
No, the building itself is 49 feet.
Okay. And we're not counting the ornamental?
Correct. The
Okay.
building, from
That's
the
what I thought.
ground to the top of the building is 49 feet.
That's what, I just need
Yes,
to clarify.
yes.
Any further questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move into presentation by the applicant, or representatives, and others in support of the application. Mr. Baxter, that would be you.
That would be me. And would you like to swear in my witnesses, please?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Go ahead, sir. Name
Good
and
morning, Barry Baxter, 117 West Main Street, LaGrange. I represent Axis Investments. Present with me today is Sarah Beth Sammons and Eric Sen. They are with Land Design, and they can answer any technical questions. We've got a fairly brief presentation, and I will run through that with you. This is the existing site that Amy showed you. This property is behind the Walgreens on Highway 53. There is a outlot here that is owned by somebody else, and then we have the feeder supply going in this location, which you all are probably familiar with. This just gives you a little bit of context about what is around and our proximity to Interstate 71. Obviously, this is a desirable location for the Hampton in light of the fact that they are very close to 71 and they expect a lot of traffic coming to their hotel and their location because of that proximity to the interstate. This is the previously approved plan that Amy showed you, and she probably had a little bit better drawing for you. You can see here that when initially approved in 2006, when the zone change was granted by the city, that there was going to be a structure that was located there, that a little bit smaller footprint than what we've got, but it was more of a commercial retail type shop location that was going to be in that location. Subsequently, the Hampton came back and just asked if they could develop this property. They wanted to put a hotel in on that property, and you all in 2007 approved the revision to our development plan, and there was going to be a Hampton Inn there. And fast forward 10 years and we still don't have a Hampton Inn. So we are back with a revised development plan, which is what we are presenting today. This is our proposed plan. And I think the things of note would be that we've got less vehicular use area substantially. There's less impervious space. The buffer that was approved in the 2007 plan was actually a 15-foot landscape buffer along this, I'm not getting anything, along this part of the property. We are increasing that by 10 feet, so that is actually an improvement over the previous plan. And then our building height will be the same as what it was before. I will tell you all that I had the very same question that you all have asked a number of different ways about the ornamental features on the top of this building, because I thought that that when I read the staff report that Amy was incorrect, that 4 feet was what we were asking for. I was thinking it was more like 12 feet. I emailed staff on Friday, and Brooke promptly responded that I was wrong, which I appreciate very much, her telling me I was wrong, and I made sure that the change was made on our proposal. I got an email back probably within 2 minutes of sending it, so I I think she was relishing the fact she could tell me I was wrong, so she was very quick about that. This is what the building looks like, and I'm sure you all have seen a Hampton Inn. This is a pretty typical branding thing that they do. This is how their buildings look, and this is what they are proposing for this particular location. We did take an opportunity to give you an idea of what kind of lighting would be on there. I'm not real savvy about this stuff, but this explains how the orientation of the light would be. It's obviously going to be downward facing to try to not have any spill of the lighting from our particular boundary lines. The variance request, again, goes back to asking about the height. Really, that applies to this area, not the area checked in yellow. So we're looking at about a 4 feet based upon the fact that we've got a 49-foot structure and the maximum is 45. Just to give you an idea, you've got the 4-story Ashbury or Luxbury, whatever it is these days, the Best Western that's located in close proximity to this, and that just is sort of giving a comparison to their height versus our height. This is the waiver request as it relates to the buffer. We're increasing it from the previously approved, but we understand that we are 25 feet less than what is required by the current code. We will ensure that the opacity is what is required under the code, so there won't be any changes in that as it relates to the neighbors, and there won't be none of those trees or the fencing is not coming down. And in I think somewhere we've got a picture here of some trees that we propose to put in at the base of the retaining wall, right? So that's coming up. This again just gives you an idea that there was 14 feet between the pavement and the property line in 2006, 15 feet in 2007, so we've increased that somewhat. This would be an example of the type of trees that we're proposing to put in. Obviously, we've got to take a landscape plan to staff and get that approved, but there would be additional trees that would be put in at the base of the retaining wall. Obviously, they can't interfere with that easement that we talked about, but they would be put in to provide some additional buffer. This is just the highlights of what we're asking for. We're asking for the same variance request that was granted in 2007. We're increasing our landscape buffer slightly based upon what was previously approved, and there's substantially less impervious surface than what was previously approved. We've got a less of a footprint on than the building will than what was previously approved, and less in the way of parking. I provided you all, in an effort to try to give you some ideas, some proposed motions as it relates to the landscape buffer area, the development plan, and the variance. Those things are contained. I just copied these for you from my presentation, and so those things are contained in your packet. What I did in large part is I went back to 2007 and looked at the file, and I copied some things that were contained within the file as it relates to the 2007 request. This was straight out of the staff report, and there were some blanks in there, so I went back and looked at the findings and decision in 2006, the motion that was made to approve. Obviously, it was a different structure. In 2007, Commissioner McWilliams made a motion, and this is the motion that he made in 2007 that was approved to give us the revised development plan for a Hampton Inn at this location. This is some suggested things that I think in the comprehensive plan that are complied with, and so I gave you all a draft motion to approve that revised development plan based upon these goals contained within the comprehensive plan and objectives. And that concludes our presentation. Obviously, I've got the experts here if you want to ask them technical questions about the plan, but that would conclude our presentation.
Alrighty, that's good. And let's see here. Let me ask quickly, is there anyone here that would like to speak in support of this application? Anyone here to speak in support of? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone here that has testimony and question by those opposing the application? Anyone here want to testify or have questions? in opposition to the application? Okay, seeing none, we'll now open it up for question of the applicant by the commission. And before I do that, I've got just a couple of questions that Mr. Baxter might address to you and then see who might be able to answer it. The building that you all have outlined here or whatever, that's basically the type of structure, I mean, you know, as far as brick and color scheme and that kind of thing that will actually be built there?
That is the Hampton brand, yes, sir.
Okay, and is the back area there, is that an indoor pool?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the area on the back that's the brown, that's kind of covered, that is an indoor pool, correct?
Yes, and I was confused when I saw it. I thought that was the entrance, actually, and it was explained to me that that is a pool, and the entrance, this is a little bit of a covered entrance right in there that, and so that's the front of the building. It'll face Highway 53, and the back will face the conservation easement.
And are there any facilities in here for conference, like, you know, a conference room, or if somebody wanted to have a meeting there, could they do that?
I would assume the answer is yes. I mean, that's typically the case, but
I need to
Come
get
on
you to
up
come
here.
up.
You
and
gotta- you
We need
gotta-
to name and address for the record, please.
Sarah Beth Salmons, Land Design and Development, 503 Washburn Avenue, Louisville, 40222.
Okay.
There's a couple of meeting rooms. It's not a conference hotel.
Right, okay, all right. And one other question, and then I'll turn it over to the commissioners. A timeline on if this is approved to build the hotel.
They're wanting to start in the spring of 2018.
2018?
Yes, sir.
About
when
what,
they
a
would
year?
want to start. Right?
Yes, that's when they want to start construction, is 2018.
Okay.
The architectural drawings are already done. They're waiting on this approval to start the site construction drawings, and then as soon as they get their approvals, they're going to want to start.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Hampton?
On that little arm there that goes back on it's on the top of that picture. It looked like there was some overflow parking there in one of the things. Is that included in the 82 parking places, or is that more parking, or is it anything? Because it looked like it was two different ways.
That's not included in this development plan. That's included in a previously approved development plan for the Tang development.
So what's back there?
That was proposed development for retail and restaurant.
What will be back there?
On this development plan, nothing.
Okay.
It could be parking that's associated with that development when it does go through.
That doesn't have anything with this
It's
right
not
here.
included in the 82.
Thank you.
All right, or is that all, Mr. Hampton? Okay, Mr. Douglas?
Yes, I'm just trying to look at that drawing too. Everything on this side of, I guess that would be the east
East.
side?
I'm calling it, let's say that's
I would
north,
say
and
that
let's call
east,
this
yes.
east.
That's the conservation or the proposed conservation site?
It's already been deeded off, right?
The actual conservation site is beyond. It's over here. There's a really steep slope right here.
Right.
So we're trying to stay off of that steep slope as much as we can.
I guess my question then is that conservation site, is it landlocked? I mean, how would you be able
I
to?
can answer that.
Okay.
It actually has a little bit of frontage on Crystal Drive, but it is landlocked for use. So it can't be used really for anything. It's got a little bit of access on the backside. I think there's a easement that comes to it, but really that property cannot be developed.
How would, if it's deeded to the county or deeded to the city or whoever, how would they ever be able to get back there if they had to?
I forget the name of the street, but if you go down Crystal Drive and there's a left and there's a little access point
Grange
back
Drive.
there.
Crystal Drive is by
Grange
McDonald's.
Drive, sorry.
Correct.
I'm thinking of Crystal Lake and, right. Grange Drive and then also the spillway from Crystal Lake. There's a little access point behind the guardrail.
Okay.
And then jumping down the wall if you want to do that.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because it looks like to me all their storm sewer drainage is on that green space that they're adding, or it's just you know what I'm talking about? You got your storm drains and stuff. Where does that flow to? I mean, I see all the basins, I see everything. Does it where does it go? I know there's an existing pond, but is that on that conservation location?
Let me get his name and address for the record, and then
Okay.
we'll get,
Eric Sin, Lane Design Development, Title 3, Washburn Avenue, Louisville, Kentucky, 40222. There's a lot of the existing storm that's already in that was built with the previous development. So all that's currently routed to that existing detention basin in that conservation area.
So it goes into that conservation area?
Correct. I'm not sure who maintains that right now. I think it's under the Milestone that hired that development.
Yeah, they still own the property. It's never been conveyed, and I'm not sure it really will be, because neither the city nor the county sees, like,
Service agreement, Milestone people?
they still own it, yes.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't have that on speaker.
Yeah, that's right.
okay. Anything else, Mr. Douglas? Okay, Mr. Finney.
I just need some more clarification on the thing that Mr. Hampton brought up a while ago. This piece that's up here, this little finger that sticks off up the side, that is not part of this development, correct?
What finger are you talking about?
You see
This
your red
piece?
line, your red line goes up and makes this little almost triangle shaped up here at the top of the screen, right?
Yes.
That, yeah, if you just drew where you had your arrow, if you had a straight
Right
line
here.
across, come on down.
This piece right here.
No,
previous-
no. To the right.
This?
Yes, that area, if
Yes.
you had a straight line off that one, that little triangle area, that is not included in this.
It is included in this development. That is part of they own that part of the property, correct?
I understand, but it is not part of the hotel development.
It's not gonna be developed, it's not gonna be
It is part of our property, but it is not going to be developed, yes. sir.
Correct.
Understand it's part of your property, total property, but it is not part of the hotel development.
Well, I guess it's
Doesn't
part
make
of the
sense.
property being developed, but it is not something that we are developing. There's nothing that's being developed in this area. And then there's the other property that they spoke about, which is the tract 6 that's
Right,
adjacent to
yeah,
this.
the conservation,
This actually has some steep slopes on it.
right.
And I think the contour lines indicate that that kind of continues along in there, right?
Okay,
So that is not going to be built upon, no, sir.
okay, so what I'm just saying, is that's not going to be parking, that's not going to be.
No, sir.
Anything to do with the hotel?
No, sir,
Okay, thank you.
beyond somebody mowing the grass, so.
All right, any further questions from commissioners? Ms. Smith?
Rooms? That's what I thought, but I thought one of the things up there said 95.
You got to come to the microphone.
Yeah, pull the mic towards you. Okay,
That's-
all right.
Ms. Smith, right up here, this is the plan. Okay, this is 2017. In
Sorry.
2007, you are
Got it.
correct, it was 95.
Okay. All right, any further questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move down to, I guess, Mr. Baxter, final statement.
I don't have anything further, Mr. Chairman. I won't belabor it. I will tell you, because you're going to ask me, do we have any objection to any of the proposed binding elements? And the answer is no, sir.
I'm sorry?
Put the binding
Oh, okay. All right, with that, docket PZ 17031 is closed. And call on Mr. Urban and staff to outline what's being requested here and what we need to consider. And then I ask Mr. Combs the same question.
Sure, you have two decisions first. One is a waiver, the other is a variance, and then ultimately the revised development plan. We'll take the landscape buffer area waiver first. In your staff report, you have proposed motion for either approval or denial. It is a request to change the landscape buffer from 50 feet to 25 feet. The applicant has provided you with a potential motion, if you want to refer to that, if you're so inclined to approve. And that's the first decision you have to make.
Okay. Mr. Combs, anything you need to add? Nothing further. Okay. So I guess the first thing we'll need to consider is a waiver of section 300.050, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the chair would now entertain a motion on the request for the waiver of sections 300.050, property perimeter landscape buffer area and plantings. And I guess then the height request,
We'll take that later.
take that later. Okay, we'll do the first waiver request first, which is the property perimeter landscape buffer. So do we We have a motion to address that request. Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move for approval of the landscape area buffer as requested. This is a variance, correct?
Waiver.
Waiver, excuse me. This is a waiver as requested. Strict compliance with regulations would create an undue hardship because of the exceptional challenges of the topography and man-made conditions in that area, such as the steep slopes on the backside, which is currently committed to but not transferred to county or city use, but as Jim noted earlier, is potentially there, but in the meantime remains under the control of the owner, and its use is limited to this conservation type and drainage accommodations. In addition, the testimony provided states that the existing landscaping would not be reduced. In fact, they would add to that, even with the reduction in the buffer area. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Combs, is that adequate?
You mentioned,
Is your mic on, sir?
yes, it is.
Okay, motion is accepted. Do we have a second? Mr. McWilliams seconds. All right, any discussion now on the motion to approve the waiver request of section 300-050, the property perimeter landscape buffer? Any discussion? Okay, seeing no hand go up, Ms. Fox, let's do the vote on the motion to approve the waiver request of section 300-050.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss,
Yes.
Mr. Mesker,
Yes.
Mr. McWilliams.
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Bonet,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Halfland,
Yes.
Mr. Hampton,
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Right, the motion to approve the waiver request on docket PZ 17031 has been approved on a vote of 13-0. And with that, now we're down to the request for a height variance from section 180-040. Mr. Urban, would you outline that, please?
Sure. And again, in your staff report, you have proposed motions for either approval or denial. It is a request for a variance from the required 45 feet to 49 feet, so the variance request is 4 feet.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Mr. Combs, anything you need to add?
No.
All right, Chair would now entertain a motion on the height variance request of section 180-040. Mr. McWilliams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we approve the 4-foot variance request because it will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard and nuisance to the public, will not allow any unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations.
Okay. Mr. Combs, is that adequate, sir?
It is.
All right, got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Okay, Mr. Mesker seconds. Any discussion now on the motion to approve the height variance request from section 180-040? Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, we'll proceed to vote on the motion to approve the height variance of 4 feet under docket PZ 17031. So, Ms. Fox, let's do that vote, please.
Ms. Bonet,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Halfland,
Yes.
Mr. Hampton,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss,
Yes.
Mr. Mesker,
Yes.
Mr. McWilliams,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
All right, the requested waiver of, or excuse me, height variance from section 180.040 of 4 feet has been approved on a vote of 13 to 0. And so with that, the last thing we need to consider on this docket is the revised development plan. And Mr. Urban, would you outline that, please?
Sure. Having approved the waiver and variances requested, you're being asked to consider the approval of the revised development plan. There are motions for either approval or denial in your staff report. On the screen and in front of you in your monitors, you have proposed binding elements. There are 12 of them. I will go ahead and read them if you want me to read them all out loud into the record.
Yes.
The applicant has agreed to the proposed binding elements. Number one is there should be no changes to the development plan without approval of the Oldham County Planning Commission. Number two is any signage must be in compliance with Section 290 and only permitted upon submittal and approval of a sign permit application to the City of LaGrange. Number three is the development must comply with the Oldham County Fire Hydrant Ordinance. Number four is no lot may be further subdivided resulting in greater number of lots than the approved by the Planning Commission. Number five is a landscape plan shall be submitted and approved by staff. Number six is in order to satisfy any water flow and pressure requirements of LaGrange Fire and Rescue, the applicant must provide any necessary upgrades to the water line system for this site prior to record plat. And the record plat has actually already been approved, but we want to make sure that they're in compliance with the fire hydrant requirements. Number seven is curbs shall be provided along all driveways within the development. Number eight is all easements requested by any utility or other service agency shall be provided and labeled on the construction plans. Number nine, full cutoff lighting shall be used. Lighting shall be directed down and away from adjoining residential properties. Number 10, signage shall indicate that semi-tractor trailer parking is prohibited on this tract. Number 11 is dumpsters for the hotel shall be located on the northeast portion of the lot as indicated on the revised development plan. And number 12 is the development plan must comply with all established state and county ordinances and requirements at the time of approval, and no building permit shall be approved until all standards are satisfied.
All right. Mr. Combs, anything else you need to add?
Nothing further.
Okay. Heard the motion, heard the request here, and the chair would now entertain a motion on the approval of the revised development plan on docket PZ 17031. We have a motion. Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move for approval of the revised development plan based on testimony and evidence provided to find that it complies with the objectives of the comprehensive plan. Specifically, I'll cite those in applicant's submittal, including goal BI2 for public-private business activity, goal CF3, stormwater runoff management, go LU3, economic development, objective LU3-2, commercial workplace development. The approval would be contingent upon the elements just cited by Mr. Urban.
Okay. Mr. Combs, is that adequate?
I would add that it's also in compliance with the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulation.
Forgive me, absolutely. I would incorporate that into the motion.
Okay.
Be fine.
All right, got a motion on the floor to approve the revised development plan on docket PZ 17031. Do we have a second? Have Mr. Hampton seconds? All right, any discussion? Mr. Finney?
I have a question on, I guess, binding element number 4. Does this prohibit the future use of that little triangle that was discussed from further development?
Well, it doesn't prohibit its development, but it prohibits it from being subdivided for an additional development plan.
Explain that.
Well, it can't, the lot can't be divided and then something else added to it. And we heard testimony that the applicant said they're not going to develop it. So that's an old binding element going way back to the original commercial subdivision that was approved and the number of lots.
Right.
So we just added it to it, but I don't think that it would comply with our requirements for any other kind of use, so.
Okay, thank you.
It's kind of a it's been pre-approved as a binding element, we just added it in there, so.
All right, any further discussion on the revised development plan? Motion to approve. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll ask Ms. Fox if she will do the vote. And this is a motion to approve the revised development plan on docket PZ 17031.
Ms. Bonet,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Halfland,
Yes.
Mr. Hampton,
Yes, I can't hear.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Plainfus,
Yes.
Mr. Mesker,
Yes.
Mr. McWilliams,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
All right, the motion to approve the revised development plan on docket PZ 17031 has been approved on a vote of 13-0. So Commissioners, we've got one docketed item left. I would suggest that we go ahead and try to get that done by lunch or we're close to it. Do we need to take a break for, a 5-minute break or anything? Everybody good? Okay, we'll move right into our last docketed item. So, Ms. Feeman, are you be presenting? Okay. I'll ask Ms. Fox, if she would, to read our last docket, please.
Docket PZ 17-034. Application has been filed by Sky Automotive LLC for approval of a revised development plan for property located at the 1200 block of North Highway 53 LaGrange. The applicant is also requesting an amendment to binding element number 3 attached to the original approval of the zoning map amendment and development plan, docket 2692 of May-June 1997. The property is Zone C3, Commercial General Business District.
All right, thank you. And with that, Ms. Feeman, I assume you'll be presenting our docket for us.
Yes, last docket of the day, Ms. Fox stated the application for you. It is located at the 1200 block of North Highway 53 in the city of LaGrange. It is just over half an acre, and it is Zone C3 General Business District. It's currently vacant land. This is an aerial view of the site. You can see the site in question outlined in blue. This is the current zoning. It is, in fact, Zone C3. It has C1 commercial to the north, the south, and the east, and I2 heavy industrial to the west. Some site history. On May 27th, 1997, the Oldham County Planning Commission recommended approval of a zoning map amendment from C1 to C3 to the LaGrange City Council for a veterinary office. The LaGrange City Council then approved the zoning map amendment on June 26, 1997. This was the development plan submitted with docket 2692 in 1997. Just to give you your bearings, this is that private access easement. This is Highway 53. And this was a development plan for a veterinary hospital. The applicant is requesting to amend the binding elements for this tract, specifically binding element number 3, which states the use of the property is limited to principally permitted uses in C1 zoning district and the proposed veterinary office and kennel. So basically what that meant was everything in C1 was permitted, and even though they were changing the zoning to C3, they only allowed a veterinary office and kennel from that list of C3's permitted uses to be allowed on this tract. Everything else was off limits from C3. Vehicular sales and display is not a permitted use in C1, but it is a permitted use in C3. So the applicant is requesting to be able to use this tract as a vehicular sales and display business. Justification for removing the binding element, which restricts C3 permitted uses on this tract to a veterinary hospital, include the general character of the area has changed, zoning practices have changed, and the binding element limiting permitted uses is an encumbrance to the property because it restricts the land's development potential and causes hardship for the landowners. So just to clarify, there was one motion to approve the zoning map amendment and development plan with binding elements. Now we do that, as you know, separately. We do a zoning map amendment recommendation to the legislative body, and then we do an approval or denial of the development plan, which does not go to the legislative body. However, in 1997, the Planning Commission recommended approval in one motion, and they included the binding elements in that one motion. So after speaking with John Carter and with the applicant's attorney, we thought that it made more sense for the binding element amendment to be a recommendation to LaGrange City Council. Hopefully that clears it up for you, but if you have more questions, I'll do my best to explain. So now we're switching over to the revised development plan application. The development will utilize the private access easement for ingress and egress, just like the original development plan in 1997 proposed. There are 12 parking spaces reserved for car display and 6 spaces reserved for customers, which exceeds the minimum parking requirements for this proposed use. The applicant is proposing a 900 square foot office and 900 square foot detailing bay. Auto detailing will be for the cars on the lot only. This service will not be offered as a vehicular repair use. The applicant has proposed a development plan that honors all of the other binding elements that were associated with the original approval, including lighting and vegetative screening. So this is the proposed development plan. This is Highway 53. I don't know if you can see that. And the existing private access will be used for ingress and egress. There will not be an additional curb cut on Highway 53. You can see the yellow dots are the proposed light poles. We had a representative from the Miami Lutheran Housing Association, which is this adjoining property, ask us about light spill off and about the perimeter landscape buffer, and I did forward that email to you. It seemed like from what the applicant and staff described to her that they felt comfortable with what was being proposed as far as landscaping and lighting. There is an existing proposed 15-foot property perimeter landscape buffer, which they are honoring on this development plan, and a proposed 6-foot tall privacy fence or heavy landscaping along that perimeter that abuts both of the residential properties. So they're zoned C1, so they're not required to have that 50-foot buffer. They're only required to have a 15-foot buffer, which the applicant is honoring. This is the private access easement that currently serves York Cliff, which is the housing apartment complex. And this is the property in question today to the right. This is a north view on Highway 53. I'm standing at the that private access easement off of 53, looking towards Waterworks Drive. And this is the south view, back towards the city of LaGrange, downtown. And this is just going up that private access easement. You can see the stake for the property in question. This is a north view. And I'm standing in the site currently. Just a zoomed in view of the north. This is the east view, which is York Cliff Apartments. And again, the applicant has proposed along this property line either a 6-foot tall privacy fence or high opacity screening to buffer this apartment complex from this use. Again, this is just the east view of York Cliff Apartments. This is the south view, which is shows the adjoining property owner, the Lutheran Housing Association, and again there will be another privacy fence or high opacity screening from that property as well. This is the west view looking back out towards Highway 53. This is the front property line. So in summary, the first motion that you'll make, the applicant is requesting that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the LaGrange City Council that binding element number 3 associated with the zoning map amendment approved in 1997 be removed. This binding element states use of the property is limited to principally permitted uses in C1 zoning district and proposed veterinarian office and kennel. Staff is also recommending to revise the language of the 3 remaining binding elements to meet current standards. Some of the language in those binding elements don't necessarily apply to us today, so you're already taking it to LaGrange City Council. We said let's go ahead and update those and make them relevant today. So the first one doesn't change. Vegetative screening is required to be provided on the south and east sides. The second one, stormwater control to be provided subject to the approval of LaGrange Public Works and the county engineer. Before it just said LaGrange Public Works. Number 3, exterior lighting will be directed downwards and shall not trespass on adjoining properties. And that was just updated to add and shall not trespass on adjoining properties. And then we added number 4, there shall be no major changes to the development plan presented at the October 24th, 2017 meeting with, and this should be applied to the development plan. I apologize for confusing you. This number 4 should be applied to the development plan. The first 3 are associated with that original approval of both of them together, and we're just revising them to have them make sense to this current application. So your second motion will be an approval or denial of the development plan for auto sales and display. If you choose to approve the development plan, our proposed binding element is there shall be no major changes to the development plan presented at the October 24th, 2017 meeting. That's all I have. Hopefully it was clear.
Clear as mud. No. All right, thank you. Good job. All righty, let's see here. Is there any, Mr. Chisholm, do you have anything from the city of LaGrange that you need to make us aware of? Okay, thank you. All right, he said he made all of his comments at TRC, just to get on the record. So, all right, with that, commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Mr. Finney?
I have kind of a curiosity question. Does staff know why there was a binding element of only veterinarian kennels on that property to start with, since it was kind of restrictive?
Can only assume that they were fine with it being a veterinarian clinic, but all the other proposed uses may, that could have come with a C3 were not necessarily in the development plan, and I've seen this happen before. We did a case in Crestwood like that. I wasn't here at the time of that approval, but I'm assuming why they did it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Douglas.
This may be able to be answered by the applicant. I don't know if staff asked these questions to the applicant beforehand, but I noticed in the previous planning commission, there was discussion about the veterinarian clinic doctor that was building that facility. There was an agreement or something worked out between, because that's a private access drive, about the maintenance of that drive. Was there a continuation of that being?
You can ask
the
that
applicant
question.
that.
For the applicant.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move into presentation by the applicant and representative and others in support of the application. Mr. Craig Mile, I would assume that would be you?
That's me.
Okay. And if you have some folks here with you that would like to speak, we'll get them sworn in and then get their name and address for the record and when they speak.
Again, I'm Beach Craig Mile, and I'll introduce, this is Jordan Harizanov, okay, and his
That one
wife,
you'll have to spell.
Stephanie. The K is silent in Bulgarian.
Okay.
And his father, Trifon Harizanov, is here also, in from Bulgaria for a while. And Dave Garber as our engineer.
That one we can spell. That's pretty easy. Okay, Ms. Fox, get them sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. All righty, Mr. Craig Mile. Go
Okay.
ahead.
again, I'm here because they're a two-member LLC, so they had to get a lawyer, okay? It's basically going to be a startup internet sales car business, be a small model, sort of like the Cottage Motors in Crestwood, if you're familiar with that. It's a concierge model where people will look for their internet, on the internet for their vehicle. Yorton will find the vehicle, and there will be a very small number of cars on the floor or on the display. Probably 3 to 5 cars at first will be out there. They'll probably be ordered and then shipped in. So they're not going to be like your average car lot with lights and flags and everything. We've done everything possible to try to blend into the otherwise residential surrounding areas. It's York Creek, York Cliff Apartments are behind there, and Yorton has worked with them extensively to make sure they're okay with this plan. Their primary comment was lighting and shrubbery. Same thing with the Graceworks Lutheran Apartments to the south of the development. The basic plan is to have a very small office, and then I'm going to introduce Yorton to kind of go over that portion of it, but to talk about the business. But the history of the plan, why I'm here, why it's a little bit more complicated, is because of the originally when the zoning was C1 back in '97, when Dr. Rainey is also here too. I'm sorry, Tom, and then we'll swear you in later on. But Dr. Rainey was going to move his vet clinic down to this location, and it was zoned C1 at that time. And best that Jim and I can figure out is the regulations back in '97 only allowed for veterinary clinics as conditional uses under C3. C3 is, more liberal in terms of what it allows, and so currently, if we just look at this as C3 zoning, this is a permitted use under C3. We don't even need to be here. I mean, asking for the amendment. But at the time, it was, they basically said, we're going to make you a C3, but you can only do what's in C1, okay, in '97. So C1, but they sort of allowed a conditional use, so they added it as a binding element to the zoning, and then passed it to LaGrange, so that LaGrange also agreed to it. So that's why we need to follow the zoning rules as opposed to just the binding elements rules. Because normally, the commission can remove binding elements without having to go to other words. But in this case, the binding elements were applied to a zoning rule. So, which vehicle sales is allowed, and but Dr. Rainey, let's just change it back. Dr. Rainey has been trying to sell this property for 10 years, and it's created a hardship on him, and he's finally found someone that's interested in buying it. But because of this encumbrance on the property, it has, basically caused the property to be fairly unmarketable. So at this point, I think I've explained the history of it. I'm not going to go into the engineering any more than let Dave go into that to address any engineering issues you might have or land use issues. But at this point, what I'd like to do is ask Yorton to come up and give us an overview of what you've done, and what your plans are, and the efforts that you've made to contact your neighbors to get along with it. Thanks.
And if I could, I'd ask you to spell both your first name and last name so we can get it correct for the record, please.
Good morning, everyone. Absolutely. First name is spelled Y-O-R-D-A-N. It's like Jordan with a Y. And last name is spelled K-H-A-R-I-S-N. Izan, like Nancy, O-V, as Victor.
Okay, thank you very much. And just address for the record.
Address is 9412 Tamarisk Parkway, Louisville, Kentucky, 40223.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
sir.
First, I would like to start with our statement. My name is Jordan Khrizanov, and I'm the applicant, along with my wife Stephanie, for Sky Automotive. My wife Stephanie and I have lived and worked in Louisville for almost 20 years. We have 2 young children, Elena Rose, 3, and Lily, age 6. We are looking to invest in our family and future development to own our business model as Sky Automotive in the city of LaGrange, Kentucky. Stephanie and I have long since wished to live in the city of LaGrange area and plan to make our next home in the surrounding neighborhood. We enjoy the small town feel, welcoming people, and wish to raise our girls in a family-focused community. Our wish is to live and work in the same geographical area, all while helping to provide our unique and non-invasive business service to the local community. Sky Automotive is a small car dealership, primary focus on a concierge-type business model. The name is derived from our initials and represents our commitment to mutual success. The majority of our sales are expected to be internet-based, and we don't expect to have high level of foot traffic or drive-by business to sustain our clientele base. Our business will provide a customized service to those looking for high-quality pre-owned family vehicles. We will carry minimal inventory over a low floor plan to sustain our business model. The lot at 1200 Block North Highway 53 is ideal for our needs, since we will need no more area than that. This would be considered an infield project. Our business model is based on being selective with our vehicles and using limited display space so that we are not holding excess inventory. Again, we're a startup business. The property has been on the market for over 5 years. It appears for about 10 years, and the land remains vacant. By developing this small lot, we will reduce trespassing and foot traffic in the area by defining property lines, as well as adding security with a well-defined boundary and safe lighting options for those in the surrounding apartment areas. We will work tirelessly to be good stewards of the community and to contribute to the long-term economic growth of the city and surrounding area. We seek your approval to develop and grow our business into a partnership for the years ahead. We thank you for your time and consideration. Also, I would like to add a few more sentences in regards to our attempt to build relationships already with Luther and King community and York Cliff Apartments. Personally, and I have reached out to both owners and management staff to share our plans and vision for our small business. And the intent was to build those relationships early and to be able to understand if there's any specifics that would need to be addressed from those parties. After our discussions, after sending emails and requesting for testimonies, it's our understanding that both neighbors don't have any objections to our plans, and those that have been shared were included in the application. And I believe those are pertaining to landscaping buffer and lighting only. So, the name of the owner for Yorkcliff Apartment is Arville Dobson. And I just want to read briefly their statement. It says, Jordan development plan looks good. A minor suggestion would be to eliminate the 6-foot wooden privacy fence along the northern property. It might look better to soften this line with heavy landscaping rather than a fence. And I believe that David will be able to explain. We will honor that request, and David will be able to explain how we're going to accomplish that. Also, we unfortunately wish these folks were here so they can provide their own testimony, but I guess they were busy. So basically, I'm reading email communication, text communication. Also, after revising our plan, we just received a text from Arville Dobson, again, the owner of Yorkcliff Apartments, and he stated that, I'm sorry, but I'm scheduled to travel, and he says that he doesn't have any objections to our development plan. Also, I would like to read the second statement. This is from Lutheran King. It says, housing. It says, good morning, Mr. Khrizanov. Thank you for information. I see that we are in the northern part of the lot, and you are proposing a 6-foot privacy fence. Do you have a landscaping plan? And are you submitting it to the fiscal court and so on? If so, could you share that with us? We have provided those plans. Thank you so much for allowing us to share watching your progress through this process to attain your goal. Have a great day, and again, this is no objections to, and I believe Brooke mentioned that that's been shared with you.
Can we submit those as
Evidence.
Yep.
So with that said, that's my statement. Thank you so much for
Okay.
your time.
Like I say, we'll just need a copy of those, or need those
Yes.
for the record, or for the.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Our next witness will be Dave Garber.
Thank you.
Professional land surveyor, professional engineer.
Hello, good morning. My name is David Garber, Garber Chilton Engineers and Land Surveyors, 2249 Commerce Parkway, LaGrange 40031. Thank you for hearing our case this morning. Now that, while we have the display up here, I'll go over some of the, this is just a little bit different than what we had provided. And we were trying to stay attuned with the neighbors. What we've done, the two areas they were talking about where they would rather have landscaping instead of a privacy fence was along here and along here. I understood this side over here a little bit more, and now I realize why they wanted that over here. They would be, you know, they're looking at it and from this side. Over here along the driveway, this driveway will serve this property as well as apartments in the back. And what we did after we submitted our plan was along here, we have moved the fence in onto this property. And instead of having a 6-foot wood privacy fence, we've decided to have a like an aluminum fence, like we provided out on Rocket Storage, where it looks like wrought iron, but it's made out of aluminum, and you can see through it. So we've moved the fence in, and now we've planned for heavy landscaping. So that's what the neighbors will be seeing, is the heavy landscaping. And we'll still have a fence that will provide security. And we did the same over here. Actually, we removed the fence from the property line here, and again, you see the dark green is the heavy landscaping. So the dark green here is the area where we'll have heavy landscaping. And what we're proposing is, you see the X's coming around here, that's our fence. We've pulled the fence back in this area, way back here to where you come up on the driveway, and that there will be a gate right there. So we've moved the gate way inside, so it's not out by the driveway. This was somewhat of a challenge site, you know, for us to work on. When I first saw it, I said, why would you want a car lot here? You can't even see it from Highway 53. And I said, you've got all those big trees and everything along 53. And he said, we don't need to be seen. And I go, you're going to have a car lot that you can't see the cars. And as Jordan said, that's not the type of car lot he's going to have. It's the concierge. My concept is he has clients that will call him that they'll be looking for a certain type of car. He can find it for them, bring it here, or it may be a car that he already has. And then they will make an appointment and actually come up here and look at the car. So I said, well, with that, then maybe we can make something work. A couple challenges was access. We're limited. There's an access easement over here, and the access easement actually looks like this. So we had to get our driveway off of the existing road somewhere within that triangle. So that's the limits of the access easement, and that was developed, you know, a long time ago. So what we did is we pulled the driveway as far as we could this way and put a curve to make it longer, and that's helping with the slope. We had some slope problems getting from the driveway up to the property. So with the way we've developed that now, we have a reasonable way to get up there. And again, part of the design is to keep the water off of Highway 53. So we've come up with an idea to catch this water in a trench drain, and then we're gonna have a detention basin, which I have gone over with Scott at the county, to provide detention. Well, also then we're limited, we have a water line easement out here, so we had to miss the water line easement. So everything that we've finally ended up with worked around all of these constraints we had. Water line easements, access easements, trying to please all the neighbors. Then we came up with the size for the building. Jordan thought that 900 square feet for an office, which is this part, would be plenty for him forever. He just doesn't need that much room. But then he said he needed some room that he brings the car in. They will want to detail it, clean it up, have a place for that. So then we just added this other square footage over here. And that will make up the entire building, room for office, and also room for their cleaning the cars, all the detailing. There will be, you know, there will be no one that will have, it's not a car repair lot, so you won't be able to make an appointment to go get your oil change or tires rotate or anything like that. It's strictly to serve his own cars. We have, we've worked out a way to keep all the water that's coming, basically it drains from the top to the bottom. And the water now is coming out right onto Highway 53. That's unimproved. You can see the amount of green space we have on there. We've tried to limit the hard surfacing to just what's needed for his use. You know, we tweaked it and made it a little bit smaller, but we still have some excess water that has to be dealt with. So that's the purpose of our detention basin there. We do have direct access to get it back out on 53, which is the state. TRC, you know, CWC Moore stated he wants to see the calculations, so we're not putting any more water out on 53 than is going now. The one thing that wasn't discussed was, I do have two things I want to show on the overhead. If you can switch that over for me. The question of lighting came up. So we positioned we just need 3 lights to light up the parking lot. That'd be for security. And we've chosen, Jordan has chosen some LED lights. They're not big and bright. And this kind of shows you the pattern where we'll have the light here, and you can see the pattern just goes out from the light straight down, not very far. So it's just three heads is all that's going to be needed to light up his parking lot. This is the type we're going to use here, not this type. This would be a type if you put it in a landscape island and it covers 4 areas. So we'll be using this type right here. The other thing that we talked about was what might the building look like. This is a very computer-generated, non-architectural, not real pretty-looking drawing, but you can see here where this half will be for the, I can draw on this. This half will be for the office area, and then we have this half over here that will be for their detailing. It's 30 by 60, and it just fits right up in that corner, and it will serve his needs for many years to come. Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't do that. And this shows up a little bit better on this is how that darker area on this, you can see at the bottom, what that really represents is some type of a stone veneer or brick veneer that will just dress the building up a little bit, have some different colors in it. So it would just make the building look a little bit nicer. And I believe I've As I said, we're staying out of Ted's water line easement. There's a water line easement out front. The utilities are all there, water, sewer, electricity. So there's everything we need to develop this parcel. And just feel that this little infill area, we did the best we could on getting everything in there he needed and utilize that small space. And thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be able to answer them.
Okay. All right. Mr. Craig Mile, anything else that you'd like to add to your presentation?
Yeah, I'd like to call Dr. Rainey,
Sure.
just briefly.
Okay. We'll need to get him sworn in because I don't think he was sworn in. So, Ms. Fox?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Dr. Rainey, and just name and address.
I'm Dr. Thomas Rainey, a veterinarian at 2416 North Highway 53 in LaGrange. And we purchased this property 20 years ago. It was a Plan B for our veterinary hospital, and Plan A worked out, so we stayed where we were. And anyway, like I say, it's been on the market. It's a very unique lot, not open to a lot of different uses, and I think this would be a very nice addition to the business climate here in LaGrange. And like I say, I don't understand all the zoning, but that little binding elephant kind of put a kink into the whole thing, you know. So it's very acceptable to me. And we have shared access, and that was approved a long time ago and still is with the York Cliff Apartments. And I think this would also add security to them rather than having a field there. Somebody could lay in that field and rob the apartments. This way, it's all going to be nice, lit up, and secure.
Thank you, sir. All right, is there anyone else here that would like to speak in support of the application? I don't see anyone else, but, okay. Mr. Craig Mile, anything else that you'd like to add on your presentation?
That's all we have at this point.
I'm sorry?
That's all we have. I'd like
Okay.
to give you the exhibits.
All right, I don't think there's anybody here that would like to speak in opposition or have questions, but that would be your opportunity at this point. And I guess I don't see anyone getting up, so I'll turn it over to the commission for questions of the applicant. Mr. McWilliams, look like you just were ready with a question, and Nina, you got your hand up, I'll get you first. I'm not sure. Okay, all right. Ms. Crosby.
I'd like,
Yes, sir. You gonna ask him?
yes.
Okay, I'll sit over here.
Since this is like a car, not say dealership per se, but where you do sell cars, what type of cars are you going to be selling?
Well, we're trying to, thank you for your question. We're trying to model our business following the cottage auto sales. And
What?
The cottage auto sales in Crestwood, to kind of limit our vehicles to a certain make and model, and we would like to concentrate on the family vehicles, four-door sedans, SUVs, cross SUVs. And so that's, as a start of business, we would like to establish our name in the community as a source of, reasonably priced and quality vehicles. So, again, if someone is looking for a truck or a different vehicle, we can sell those too. It's just part of the model that we want to keep very low inventory, but still our main concern is, what's currently sells, and most of the vehicles are kind of perhaps maybe family vehicles, but we're open to any inventory. But again, it's a small venture, and it's going to be on as needed basis. So as a client comes to us and requests a vehicle, a Honda or a Toyota Camry or whatever that is, or Subaru, we'll be able to find that vehicle for them.
How many employees?
Well, currently it's just my wife and I that we're starting this business. So for the foreseeable future, it's going to be two of us. But hopefully, as the business progresses, we perhaps will have to find additional help. So I don't see more than 3 people, all in all, servicing this business. 3 to 4 maximum in the future.
That's all.
Okay. Before I turn over to Mr. Horton, I had one question. Mr. Garber, you said a while ago heavy landscaping. Could you define that, what that means, or your definition?
Okay, yeah, we haven't, of course, turned in a landscape plan, but you see some notes on there. We'll probably use some arborvitaes there to provide the opacity that was required, with some other fill-ins. Probably have, some trees and maybe also some shrubs, but whatever would be required of, we're calling it a heavy landscaping, but of course, we'll work with staff to make sure the landscape plan meets with their approval.
Okay. And Jordan, I have one question for you. How many cars do you anticipate at any one time being on the lot?
To be honest, again, I would like to repeat that this is a startup business, so our funds can stretch only so much. So, we don't anticipate having more than 5 vehicles. 5 vehicles at a certain 5 to 10 maximum, but 10 is going to be maybe 5 years down the road. But as you can see, this lot does not provide for a lot of vehicles. So again, the concierge plan supports that. Vehicles will be there as they're delivered and transferred to the new owner. So
The way the lot is currently configured, how many maximum number of vehicles could you have on the lot at one time?
right now, I believe that there's about 15, if I'm not mistaken, 7 plus, what is it, 12, about 18, maybe 19 vehicles, up to 20. I mean, you can use the space in the middle if you want to, as you have seen on different lots, but again, that's not our intention.
Okay. All righty, Mr. Horton.
Just, if I can just add one more thing, one of the requests from the Yorkcliffe Apartments is they wanted to make sure that there's no junk cars or like a parting business, like for parts and stuff, and that's our intention. There's going to be an entire vehicle if there's one on display. So just wanted to add that.
And would you be willing to put that in a condition of approval or a binding element? That would be, you wouldn't have junk cars there or anything like that?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Horton, I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
That's all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick clarification, Mr. Garver. I'm sure it's what it is. I couldn't find it on the legend, but I presume that's handicap parking right up next to the side there, the HC under number 3, because it's 11 feet, so that is the handicap space.
That is a handicap, right? So that would be for the visitors that come in or the clients that come in. That would be their areas.
Okay, and it qualifies for only one space for this amount of thing. It fits the qualifications for the number of space?
Yes.
The answer is yes, I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Douglas.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. First off, to the applicant for Sky Automotive. Are you currently a Kentucky dealer license
No,
with
sir.
the state?
No, sir.
Are you planning on doing that?
Absolutely.
Okay. My next question then will be is, how do you propose to get the vehicles there?
So the way the process works, you can identify and purchase a vehicle from an auction, and you work with a company, a logistics company, a transportation company that actually will transfer the vehicle from the auction to your location. So what happens is we plan to, perhaps that's the reason why we actually utilize the space with a curve, so that there is no imposing to current traffic patterns, so that a small truck, we're not planning to have semis, big semis that hold 8 to 10 vehicles. We're planning just to have a small truck that carries no more than 2-3 vehicles. And the idea is for the truck to come in, offload the inventory, and then come out.
And how many employees do you propose to hire?
Well, in the long run, we're thinking that it's going to be no more than 4.
Will those employees, because you mentioned that you will be like towing the vehicles in or a small truck, do you propose that these vehicles are going to be bought at auctions and then brought in by drivers? Or are you proposing that you're going to try to tow these vehicles in on a small flatbed truck, 3 or 4 vehicles at a time? Because I'm concerned about that turning radius in there on that road. It just doesn't look, I mean, some of it's only 15.
Yeah.
We have run through some models to show that a vehicle hauling, say, 2 cars at a time, can make that radius very easily and get in. So we used a model that's that shows the size of vehicles and things like that. We do not try to model a semi.
Well, I knew you didn't do that because you wouldn't no way you could get that in there.
Right,
with
but
turn radius,
it's wide enough, and with the radius and the width allows for the vehicles to get in there.
I was just concerned, was there any questions by the Yorkcliff Apartments about, the delay traffic sitting out there on the roadway while they were trying to open the gate to get vehicles in?
Well, that's why we put the gate up, the gate's up there about 75 feet, so they'll be able to pull up there and wait. If the gate's not even open, they will be out of the way of the traffic. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention, we're showing a stop sign coming out of our property, and then just to the left there on the other property, Yorkcliff.
Show that on your
Oh, okay.
drawing.
We're, it's dark down here, so I'm gonna put my glasses on. Right here right there is a stop sign. So that's at least to warn the people coming out, whether they stop or not, at least warn them that they should stop. And then right over here, we're proposing a sign, something like caution, vehicles entering road, just to help some with the safety.
While you're up here, you can answer this question. He mentioned, or someone mentioned about detailing bays and maintaining the vehicles, and coming from the auction, I'm assuming he's talking about detailing them, washing them,
Yes.
waxing them. What setup have you got? Because you mentioned you haven't spoken to Mr. Harris yet, reference to stormwater runoff or anything else. Where would that washing bays be? Inside the garage or outside?
No, that will be inside. We have spoke with Mr. Harris.
Oh, you have?
Oh, yes, and it was mainly runoff. I mean, again, this is gonna be probably one car at a time.
Uh-huh.
It probably wouldn't be much different than you washing your car on your property, but of
But
course,
inside
for weather.
Because he
Yeah.
mentioned that he was going to wash inside. So are there some type of drain basins inside that's going to, because I don't see any of that in that.
We haven't gotten that far with
Okay.
the building design. I think for what the capacity is, and I've designed large car washes before where we had to collect the water because it's considered gray water.
That's why I was getting at.
Right. At this point, I don't have an answer for that. I'm not sure if it's going to
Because
be.
my next question to him
required.
was, is he going to steam clean those engines to make them like they're spanking new? Because that's what detailing means.
Thank you for your question. I think to address the point is, the idea here is to be able to pull a vehicle and clean it inside, so that nobody can see it, nobody can look at dirt, nobody can look at any of those things that you might not want to see. That's why we wanted to request that space, so that we can pull the vehicle, we can service it, we can clean it, we can wax it, and it's inside and it doesn't bother any of the residents, and then pull it out. And as David mentioned, I mean, that bay is basically 2 vehicles. So even though if we wash it, the water, I mean.
Well, that's something that I think you're going to need to work with
Absolutely.
the engineer about, because you're talking about chemical runoff, you're talking about if he's going to do that. I'm not testifying here, I'm just saying, what are you doing to protect that runoff? So,
And it's not a commercial, this is not a commercial kind of operation to, like we earlier stated, that anyone can go and wax their, clean their car. This is just for us as vehicle come, as needed. So we just would like to have the space if we need it, so that it's private and you can pull a vehicle, especially in the cold days.
Yeah, to my knowledge, even some of the self-car washes in LaGrange do not have a recycling program. But I have, on large commercial drive-throughs, we've designed a system where it actually recycles the water, so you're primarily using the same water over and over, so it doesn't really leave the site. But, and I forgot to add one thing. You mentioned about his license. In order to get a license for it to be a dealer, you do have to have what's called a brick and mortar building.
Right.
So this is all part of it. This is step one, and then, because he couldn't even apply for the license until he has a place to have business. I just wanted to clarify that.
Anything else, sir? No. Okay. Anyone else? Any questions for the applicant? All right, seeing no questions, we'll move down now, I guess, to final statement. Mr. Craigmile.
Yeah, I meant to mention earlier that, I mean, Jordan is a financial analyst. He's been at Texas Roadhouse. He's been doing that for 10 years, so he's going to crunch the numbers pretty good. The other thing I meant to bring up before, can you turn on the overhead? Oh, okay. Just so you don't think that we're suddenly introducing commercial into the area. If you look at this map here, the square here is where we are. The city maintenance lot is like right across the street, which is, is a little bit to be desired. Circle K is up here. I mean, so that's sort of where it starts to get pretty commercial, right up here, Circle K. And then there's a trailer park over here, and there's a big old church over here. So this is our next door neighbor. You know, this is the Circle K on 53 as you're heading out of town. So it's already started to get traffic-y. But we don't foresee there being that much traffic. Dave's done the traffic studies, and this level of sales would be very low. In terms of our compliance with the applicable goals and objectives, I've laid those out in my application. Goal LU1 calls for an orderly development of land. We're in a C3 zone. We're carrying out C3 activities. It's all part of the plan. This is not really a premature or unexpected activity. It's been approved for 10 years to have C3 activities at this location. Objective LU1-1 requires availability of utilities. There's plenty of utilities there. Soil and slope is objective LU1-2, and we're taking care of the slope and environmental concerns. LU1-3 calls for more of an economic provision of priorities and provide incentives for compatible development. Compatible development, if you think about it, there really aren't that many used car lots in LaGrange. Hey, you want a used car, you go to Crestwood, okay? But there aren't that many. There's like the Ford, Chevrolet, and I don't know, one other place in town where you can get a used car. So there really aren't that many. Goal LU3 calls for increased tax revenues. So, the more he sells, the more taxes that'll get paid. Car registrations. LU3-2 calls for mixed-use environment, and that's sort of introducing a non-obnoxious business in the midst of apartment complexes. Transportation, goal T1 is met. We have very low traffic expectations. Dave has managed the access very well, I believe. And the last area, I guess I would say, is the environmental area. Goal E1 calls for the preservation of natural resources. You've made a good point about the cleaning. That would probably be the most. There's not going to be any oil changes, disposing of all that. There's no soil erosion issues that have been arisen, and the natural topography has been protected in terms of the E2 and E1 objectives within the environmental goal. So with that in mind, I would point out that this really requires a two-part analysis, and the two motions we've made or applications are codependent upon each other. Is that in order to decide whether you want to change the binding elements, you have to really consider what the structure is going to look like. And vice versa, in order for the structure, we have to have the amended binding elements, because otherwise, the binding elements say the only thing that we can put there is a vet clinic. Period. So they, that land is locked unless somebody wants to put a vet clinic in. And like Dr. Rainey mentioned, he could put a kennel in there with 100 yapping dogs, and that's not going to happen. And so I believe he's made a good position that they're not going to be that much vehicles. It's going to be low traffic, low volume, high quality, late model cars. Very similar to the like Cottage Motors model in Crestwood. So if there's any other questions, I'll be glad to take those. Otherwise, we would ask that you amend the binding elements and the restriction, the proposed binding elements that Brooke presented are fine with us. If you want, I don't want to get into the esoteric area of whether binding elements should apply to zoning regulations. I mean, I've debated this for a long time, whether binding elements go to the land or go to the zone. I won't go there. But I just did, didn't I? See ya.
All right. Mr. Cordmale, that completes your application on this docket then, please, or sir?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, with that, docket PZ 17034 is complete, and I'll ask Ms. Veedman if she'll put that back up so that we know what we're being requested to approve here. And then I'll ask, when she gets that done, I'll ask Mr. Urban if he will outline what we will consider on docket PZ 17034 on the first motion.
I think to clarify, it would be easier if you choose to do this, to recommend approval, to just release all of the binding elements that were originally associated with the zoning map amendment and apply the new binding elements to the development plan.
Yeah,
So
I
you'd
agree.
be recommending, if you choose, to the city of LaGrange that all the binding elements with this associated zoning map amendment be deleted. And then you'll apply these to the development plan as a separate motion.
No, well,
All right. All righty, that sounds pretty straightforward. And I'll ask Mr. Urban, would that be in the form of one motion? Could we do that in one motion, or do we need to remove those and then do another motion to add those in as a recommendation to the city of LaGrange?
I think if you put that all in the same motion, that you're just deleting all the old binding elements and you're proposing new ones as a recommendation to the city council would be sufficient in the development plan.
Okay. Is that? Ms. Feeman?
I think it would be more clear because we're trying to separate zoning map amendment from development plan. So it would be clearer to just recommend approval of removing the binding elements from the zoning map amendment motion, because that was what was recorded with their certificate of land use.
Okay.
And then make a separate motion to approve the development plan with the binding elements.
You can do it either way.
Okay. All right. Well, we want to make it as clear as we can make it, and because it was pretty confusing the way it was done the first time in '97. So, commissioners, do you all understand what's being requested here? Okay. Well, Chair would now entertain a motion on the docket PZ 17034 to remove those. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that we recommend approval to the city of LaGrange that in connection with the existing binding elements assigned in 1997, that those elements be removed and that the proposed binding elements be assigned. Justification for this action is that the character of the area has changed, as evidenced by Mr. Cragmile's testimony of existing land uses in the general vicinity. That zoning practices changed now to isolate binding elements from the zoning change motion, and that the existing restrictions place an undue hardship on use of the property.
Mr. Combs, is that adequate?
It is. On this motion, have you responded to the actual new binding elements? Have you?
Not yet. We thought we'd do that as a separate motion.
So, yeah, that is
I mean, I thought we were,
That's not what he's saying, though.
That's not the way he
He-
said it.
He removed them
Yeah.
and said, recommend approval with the new binding elements. You haven't
Right.
listed those binding elements.
well,
Right.
just
So-
to keep it simple, let's remove, if it's okay with you.
Just remove the old.
remove the old ones.
So I'll amend what I said, to just remove the old binding elements, period.
And with those justifications.
With the same justifications, yes. Mhm.
And as a recommendation to the LaGrange City Council.
Correct.
Okay. Is that it? Okay. Do we have a second? Okay, Mr. Metzger seconds. All right, any discussion? Yes, sir. Mr. Douglas.
I just think for the record, we ought to have a clarification from the applicant's attorney that they're in acceptance of this because their application originally was to amend only to eliminate the third element of the reasonable use of the property consistent, and now we're just removing all the elements, which that's not what he requested in the amended application. So on record,
From
if
the
he,
applicant's
Option B here is release all. So that was my
oh, we didn't see that.
The
I
alternative.
guess I saw that one, so
delete number 3 or
that sounds
release
good.
all.
It's
So
on
I
record.
guess we're asking for you to release all.
Okay,
Thank you.
you good? Okay. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, we'll ask Ms. Fox to do a vote here. And we do have one commissioner that had to leave, Mr. Bob Klingenfuss, so we'll be one vote less than we had earlier. Ms. Fox, this is a motion to remove those, and this is a recommendation that will go to the city of LaGrange, City Council.
Ms. Bonet,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Halfling,
Yes.
Mr. Hampton,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Metzger,
Yes.
Mr. McWilliams.
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
All right, and this was a motion to recommend to the LaGrange City Council that we remove the binding elements that were approved back in 1997. And the vote to remove, our motion to remove them is approved on a vote of 12-0. With that, I'll ask Mr. Urban now if he would outline what we need to consider on the next motion.
Would you put those binding elements back up? And I want to make sure and add, there were, I think, certainly one and two additional binding elements. One is that no junk or parts vehicles allowed on the property. And the one I'd like to add is that all comments and concerns from the TRC be addressed in the construction plan phase. And then there are on the screen the recommended revisions to the binding elements. Vegetative screening is required to be provided on south and east sides. Stormwater control to be provided subject to approval of LaGrange Public Works and County Engineer. Exterior lighting will be directed downward and shall not trespass on adjoining property owners. And the last one is that there shall be no major changes to the development plan presented at the October 24, 2017 meeting with the approval by the Oldham County Planning Commission. But again, that's subject to review by the LaGrange City Council because it's going to them.
What about the one that, about the junk cars?
I said that
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry, I missed
Yeah,
that. I missed that.
I actually said that
Okay,
first rather
sorry.
than adding them at the end.
Okay. All right, you've heard the recommendation. Commissioners, what's your pleasure on a motion? What's your pleasure?
You want a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I'll give this a shot.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Finney, you have a question?
Sam Finney will
Just-
do the motion.
No, just reading this, number 4 and the way it was stated, there should be no major changes to the development plan presented at the October 24th, 2017 meeting with approval. Shouldn't that read without?
Without, correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. All right, Mr. McWilliams, do you have a motion?
Yours now.
I'm no more sure than you are, Mr. Finney. I think that I would like to move that we approve the binding elements that were presented to us
Let's approve the development plan with the binding elements.
with the binding elements that were presented to us and that are on the screen currently,
Plus the two additions.
plus the additional ones presented to us verbally by Mr. Urban.
All right. And your, the reason why, you need to add some, why that you want to recommend that to the LaGrange City Council. What's changed?
I think they'd like it.
Add that.
Objectives they read out.
What?
Does it comply with the objectives they read out?
Because it, Mr. King, because it complies with what?
The objectives that they testified.
Oh,
to.
yeah, all that wonderful information that Beach gave us, all those L1s and L3s that are presented to us in our staff report. I'll add that too.
Mr. Combs, is that adequate?
Better stop me now, Mr. Combs.
That's our recommendation to the city, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, he says it's all right. So we'll move with motion to approve the development plan with the attached binding elements as a recommendation to the LaGrange City Council that they be approved.
Said much better than I did, Mr.
With-
Chairman. Thank you.
Supported by the evidence and testimony presented
Absolutely
at this
supported
hearing.
by all of that. Yes,
All right,
sir.
did we have a second? Second? Ms. Bonet seconds. Any discussion on a motion to approve? Any discussion?
Sorry to complicate this, but this should not be a recommendation to the city. What I will do when I present is I will say the planning commission recommended approval of deleting all of these. They added these to the development plan, which will cover what was originally in that binding element. Right.
Subject to LaGrange.
A development plan doesn't go to the city council for approval.
Okay, so what?
So you're either approving it or you're denying it. It's not a recommendation, this motion.
Okay,
That sounds good to me, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Everybody understand what we're voting on? All right. Mr. Urban, Mr. Combs, are we good?
I'll stand if Mr. Irvin says it's okay.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor. Let's, there any further discussion? Any further discussion or question? All right, Ms. Fox, let's do the vote. Motion to approve the revised development plan with the attached binding elements.
I have a discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, all right, go ahead.
I know Mr. Combs, I heard him say something, but I didn't hear him clarify.
Simply said, there seems to be some issue between council, I mean, not the council, but staff, as to whether or not this is a recommendation that the board is approving for recommending to the city. I'm assuming the city could modify or change this if it so desired, but there seemed to be some indication whether Jim thinks maybe it should be in the form of a recommendation to the city versus.
Well, I guess that was my clarification, because I was
And I said
wondering.
if Jim's okay with it,
Well, again, the original,
That's a staff issue.
the original was amendment to the binding element that
Right.
restricted it to only the use of the veterinary clinic. And so if we had stuck with that and we were going and taking that then to the city council as a recommendation, they would be probably looking also, like all zoning map amendments, at the development plan at the exact same time, because they want to know what's going in there, not if they're going to say, all right, we're relieving the restriction of the veterinary clinic, what's going in there, and they'll look at the development plan. And so this is really kind of where it's a convoluted case, because it was attached to the zoning map amendment originally. So I was fine originally with saying, let's, in one motion. As one motion, and.
That's not where we are
That's
now.
not where we are now.
Right.
So I really believe that it is going to go to the city council as a recommendation, again, because that's what they're gonna base their decision to remove all the previous binding elements. They're gonna look at it and say, okay, yeah, we agree, we'll take out this, alleviate this binding, and we're gonna substitute this, and that includes what we've seen in testimony today in their presentation of a development plan with binding elements. If they don't like what they see, they can say, well, then we're not going to remove the binding elements.
So that was the clarification I wanted, because we made a motion at the beginning to recommend removing all the binding elements that the city of LaGrange had approved. And therefore, their motion would have to be that they would have to approve
They would accept,
accepting our recommendation.
because they're not going to do
Now,
that in
will
a
they
vacuum.
see the developmental plan with the new binding elements?
Absolutely,
That's
they
the question.
will.
They will.
Motion on development.
Right.
That's our, that,
Exactly, but I'm just saying that originally, the city did make their recommendation to approve those binding elements, and then we just took it away from them as a recommendation. So, and we're making that determination to slap these binding elements on the new developmental plan.
I think we're asking
When we
them
go
to.
to the, when we go to the LaGrange,
Well,
we'll submit
now we're-
a copy of that with the application.
Right,
if
I
you
understand,
approve it.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure, because at first I heard, that's why I wanted the clarification from Mr.
Combs.
Combs, which he said it was okay doing it that way.
let's just to make sure that everybody understands that the development plan portion, the city of LaGrange cannot approve or deny the development plan. They can add to the body of the binding elements or whatever to that, but they cannot, they don't have anything to do with the development plan, correct?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
But they can choose not to relieve the binding elements if they don't like the use.
Right, I understand.
So they're gonna have to know and see all these binding elements and all the development plan. And again, it's convoluted by a history on this
Right.
case.
Okay. All right, are we good with, are we ready to vote? Everyone understand where we are? Okay, Ms. Fox, this is a vote to approve with the attached binding elements.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Mesker,
Yes.
Mr. McWilliams.
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Ms. Smith. Yes. Ms. Bonet,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Halfling,
Yes.
Mr. Hampton,
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
All right, the motion on docket PZ 17034 to approve the revised development plan with the attached binding elements have been approved on a vote of 12 to 0. So, Mr. Urban, is there anything else on this docket we need to consider?
No.
Okay. We've got one other thing, Commissioners, and it shouldn't take too long, but training hours. I just want to get an update, Ms. Alvey, on our training hours.
Right. I sent out an email recently that had a link to numerous videos that you could watch. If you watch those, be sure you send me an email and let me know, and I'll add those to your training hours. If you're not sure where you're at, I can email you specifically what your training hours are.
There was a
The
training
balance.
coming up. I think Mr. McWilliams said he might try to go, and
It is November the 11th, which is Veterans Day.
Where's that gonna be?
10th. It's in Louisville. It's at
It's at the law school, U of L, Brandeis.
Oh, that's right. And it's free, and it doesn't appear you have to register. So if you do go to that, just break back documentation, and that way we can add it to your training records.
all right, and what about next month?
We should have a planning commission meeting next month. We know for sure that one applicant is finishing their traffic, and filing deadlines are tomorrow. So we should have a planning commission next month. Not sure about December, but it is a regular scheduled meeting in November. We didn't move that date for the holiday.
Okay, all right, Commissioners?
The only other
Oh,
thing,
sorry.
we were going to have a study review committee meeting this Thursday. It's been moved to next.
November the 2nd at 5 p.m., same location.
We had a conflict, we forgot about, Chamber of Commerce has the Oldham County and of the Year Thursday night, so didn't think that would be appropriate to have SRC with that going on, so it moved. Yes, Mr. Horton.
I just wanted to say that for any of you all that haven't seen some of those videos that Amy sent out, some of them are just terrific. I mean, they are really, really good. I saw a couple of them before, and I learned an awful lot from them. So they're not just something to look at. They're really cool. They're good.
All righty. With that, any other questions? Thank you all for staying 15 minutes past lunch, or whatever, 45 minutes past lunch. So we will stand adjourned.
All right.
Do you have my?
Happy hour.
I don't think I got this back.
What time's over the
It doesn't matter.